Hey guys, the Repentance Plus beta got another update with patch 1.9.7.9, which once again brought many changes to the Abyss item and its locusts. So this video will basically be a follow-up to my Abyss buff showcase from the initial Repentance Plus release. The plan is to give you an overview of everything that's new to the item, both in terms of changes to the existing locusts as well as the completely new ones. And I can already tell you there are some really crazy ones among them that are run defining, as well as dedicated synergies for fan favorite items like Brimstone and Mom's Knife that have previously been missing. Just like last time, making this video took a very long time and a lot of research and trial and error. So if you enjoy it and appreciate the effort, then please consider liking the video and subscribing to my channel. It means a lot and helps more than you think. And if you want to go the extra mile, you could also consider a channel membership, which will support me while also rewarding you with some fun perks to enjoy. But enough with the sellout, and let's jump right into the new Abyss stuff. First up, the patch addressed the actual appearance of the special locusts. If you watched my first showcase or even played with the item yourself, then you may have noticed that many of the special locusts shared the same color. Especially the grey and black ones had multiple possible effects at once. The patch, however, added tons of new sprites for all the special locusts, which makes it way easier to tell them apart and also make an easier guess of what they are actually doing in the first place. For example, look at the frost locusts. I used them as an example because it was one of the two special locust types that I missed in my first video, so I might as well show them to you here. It was previously just a dark blue locust that didn't really give a frosty vibe, but its new appearance is literally a ball of ice with wings that makes it very clear what it is about to do to your opponents. But like I said, basically all the locusts that I showed you in the first video got an updated appearance. I will not show you all of them again in this video, because most of them haven't changed mechanically, but you probably get the idea. They all have a unique look now, which will make your swarm way more colorful than before. However, there actually are a few of the initial locusts that have changed gameplay wise. So let's look at those changes first before I show you the new ones. First up, the explosive locust. This one got its damage nerfed from 40 damage per explosion down to 20 damage, as it was way too strong before. The proc chance of the explosions was also bugged previously for basically all the items. This was fixed in the new patch and they all have their intended chances relative to the power level of the absorbed item now. But don't worry, there haven't been only nerfs. The electric locust previously created sparks that only dealt a flat 0.1 damage per hit, which didn't care about your character's stats at all. This was obviously way too low and basically insignificant. The sparks of the electric locust have been buffed to deal 25% of your character's damage, which will already have them deal 0.9 damage per hit as base Isaac, which is 9 times the old damage even without any other damage items. Another locust type that was buffed is the shield locust. This one previously had a chance to destroy enemy projectiles when it comes in contact with them, and the chance for it to happen was dependent on the power level of the absorbed item that created the locust. The new patch, however, got rid of this proc chance altogether, and all the shield locusts will now destroy enemy projectiles 100% of the time, even when the locust just hovers next to your character. And to finish talking about the initial wave of locusts, I need to show you the other special type that I missed in my first video besides the freeze locust, which is the shrink locust. This one can only be created by absorbing the God's Flesh item, and it has a 20% chance to shrink regular enemies when it deals damage to them, which allows you to finish them with a simple step. But now it is time to finally show you all the brand new special locusts in patch 1.9.7.9, which make the Abyss item even more unique. Starting with the Turdy Touch locust. This locust can be created by absorbing poop-related items like the poop, Scatole, Flush, Dirty Mind and E. coli, and it has a chance to turn regular enemies into poop obstacles whenever it deals damage to them. The chance depends on the absorbed item and ranges from 20% from the likes of Brown Nugget up to 40% from the E. coli item itself. The poops created by these locusts don't synergize with your items, so they won't create golden poops if you have Midas Touch, and even the hollowed ground locust itself only creates regular poops. For the rest of the video, always keep in mind that there are some items that combine the effects of multiple special locusts in one. The locust created from the Flush item, for example, is both a Turdy Touch locust as well as the next new type, the Necronomicon locust. This locust type has a small chance to trigger the Necronomicon or Blackheart effect whenever it hits an enemy, which will deal a whopping 40 damage to all enemies in the room. And as you can see, it isn't only created by absorbing Necronomicon related items, but rather all kinds of room-wide damage related items in general. The trigger chance of this damage effect is rather low, ranging from 5 to 10% depending on the item that created the Locust, and the damage is actually affected by the Missing Page Trinket and Missing Page 2 item. Next up is the Piercing Locust. You probably guessed it. This one obviously pierces through multiple enemies instead of stopping at the first one in its path. These locusts are usually diamond shaped and are created by most items that would give piercing tears to your character, like Cupid's arrow or Death's touch. However, there is a second new type of special locust that also pierces through enemies, but is not actually created from piercing items. The Teleport Locust is created by absorbing teleport related items or those that allow Isaac to dash in some way. Like I said, these locusts also have the piercing effect, but their main trait is that they are moving extremely fast, which also means that you will shoot them out way more frequently than most other locusts. The next big group of new special locusts are the Creep Locusts. These have a chance to create small creep puddles on the ground whenever they hit an enemy. They can be created from basically every creep related item that you can think of, like for example Aquarius, Mysterious Liquid and Lemon Mishap. The chance for the pools to spawn ranges from 30 to 60% depending on the item, with Mysterious Liquid being on the upper end of the scale. The puddles will have the color of their respective items, but all of them work exactly the same by rapidly dealing 1 point of ticking damage up to 25 times before disappearing. The pools can also stack on top of each other and each of them will deal its own damage. But enough talking about P. Let's look at some farts instead, because there are two new types of special locusts related to those as well. First, let's look at the Poison Fart Locust. These are created by absorbing poison gas related items like Linger Bean, Black Bean and Jupiter. They have a chance ranging from 25 to 50% to create small gas clouds when hitting an enemy. These clouds will deal 5 damage on release, while also poisoning enemies that touch them. The poison itself ticks for your own character's damage stat just as usual for all poison effects in the game. The other fart related special locust is the Knockback Fart Locust. This one is created by absorbing fart-related items that don't poison your enemies, but push them around instead, like Wait What, Butterbean and Little Dumpy. These locusts have a chance ranging from 20 to 40% to create large farts that don't deal damage, but they will knock back enemies as well as hostile projectiles, just like the farts from their corresponding items. Anyway, while we are talking about pushing stuff away, let's quickly look at another new locust type related to that. This locust, which is blue in color, can only be created by absorbing telekinesis and the soul. Shooting it forward will have it emit an aura around itself. This aura doesn't deal any damage, but it will deflect all enemy projectiles that it comes in contact with. It doesn't outright destroy them, like the shield locust does, but you could argue that it is even more effective in some situations, since the aura makes the protective hitbox way bigger. The next group of new or reworked locusts are those related to items that modify your tier damage. There are two types of them. The first one is created by absorbing items like Apple, Tough Love and Chemical Peel that usually grant your character a chance to shoot stronger tiers. Just like the related items, those locusts also have a chance to deal extra damage with each tick. For example, the Apple Locust has a 6% chance to deal 4 times its usual damage, which in this case leads to a whopping 21 damage because of its quality of 3. However, there is also a group of items that creates locusts with a permanent damage multiplier on all their damage ticks. For example, the Chocolate Milk Locust always deals double damage, the Polyphemus Locust has a times 2.2 multiplier, and the Mini Mush Locust has a times 1.5 multiplier. Magic Mush and Cricket's Head are surprisingly not among the items that create those locusts, but I think they could easily be added as well. And to get those out of the way, Hive Mind and BFFs are actually also items that create damage multiplier locusts. The BFF's locust has a times 2 multiplier and the Hive Mind got a times 2.5 one, but I think it is still not worth it to use Abyss on them, because the actual items themselves would buff all of your locusts by 25%. Up to the next one, which I will call the Midas Touch Locust. You can probably tell what it does from the name alone. This shiny golden locust has a chance to apply the Midas Touch effect to enemies on hit, which will petrify them and cause them to drop some coins if you kill them under the effect. However, as you can see, Midas Touch is actually not the only item that creates this new special locust when you abyss it. The chance for the effect to trigger ranges from 20% on items like a quarter and Head of the Keeper, up to 40% from the Steam Sale and Midas Touch itself. The next new special locust with a big pool of items is the Rock Locust. This locust can be created by absorbing all kinds of items that can remove rocks in some way. either by shooting at them like the Terra and Sulfuric Acid items, or by walking over them like the Leo and Thundertice items. All of them have the appearance of a rock with wings, and they have a chance to destroy any obstacles in their path that can usually be destroyed by those items. This chance varies from 20 to 50% depending on the item, with Terra being the highest. But let's be honest here, the chance is irrelevant since you can just repeatedly shoot the rocks until the effect triggers. The Rock Locust can also open closed doors as well as secret room doors, which basically makes it equivalent to an infinite amount of bombs outside of combat. I bet the community will most likely have a very mixed opinion on this next new Locust type, which I call the Hungry Locust. This grey special Locust can be created by absorbing any of the bomb items or the little portal item. The Hungry Locust has the ability to eat all pickups in its path, which will permanently boost its damage. To be precise, each consumed pickup will grant them plus 0.25 flat damage per tick. But it is important to note that all pickups are worth the same. The Hungry Locust doesn't care if it eats a penny or a dime, it will always get the same damage boost. The Locust will even grow in size and change its appearance every 5 consumed pickups, up to the maximum of 25 stacks, at which point it will stop growing and it will also stop eating more pickups. The fully grown Hungry Locust will deal an extra 6.25 damage per tick in its final form, and it's up to you to decide if that's worth 25 pickups. The next new special Locust is probably my favorite one of the entire patch, the awesome Dice Locust. It can be created by absorbing basically all the dice items as well as the GB bug. It has the appearance of a flying dice, and it has the ability to use the D10 effect on enemies that it hits, which causes them to devolve into a weaker form on their own evolution tree. The chance for this effect to trigger is supposed to range from 20% from the D1 and Eternal D6 up to 70% for the D-Infinity and D10 Locust itself. However, the Dice Locusts are currently bugged and trigger 100% of the time, but this was already reported to the developers and will get fixed in the next patch. It is worth to note that each separate Dice Locust can only devolve the same enemy once, but this doesn't really matter because the Locust itself still deals damage to the transformed enemy, which will often outright kill them on the spot. This special Locust is especially effective against the powerful tainted enemies that you can encounter on the Ascent path. It doesn't care about their massive HP pool and boss armor, it will just devolve them into a way weaker form that can easily be dealt with. The next new special Locust revolves all around everyone's favorite devil item, which finally got a dedicated Abyss synergy. The Brimstone Locust can be created by using Abyss on any item that can create brimstone-like beam attacks in a straight line. This Locust has its own pitch black appearance with a red outline, and it has a chance to create a red vortex whenever it hits an enemy. This vortex will deal ticking damage to enemies that touch it, and after a brief delay, it will fire a small brimstone beam in the direction the Locust was shot at. You can basically compare this to the Brimstone and Anti-Gravity synergy, which looks very similar. Both the ticks of the vortex as well as the beam itself will deal 75% of your character's damage, independent of the Locust's quality, which means the Brimstone Locust will actually benefit from your other items quite a bit. The trigger chance for the Brimstone Vortex is 25% for Mega Blast and Brimstone itself, and 10% for all the other items that you saw earlier. However, there was one item that I didn't show you, which is Duality. This one is unique because it isn't related to beam attacks, but it can create Brimstone Locusts anyway. To be precise, it creates a half Brimstone, half Holy Light Locust that has a 10% chance to trigger one of the two effects at random. This one is really cool and flavorful if you ask me. But enough with the straight beam attacks, let's look at some rings instead. There's also a pitch black special Locust dedicated to the black ring attacks of the Atham, Maw of the Void and Little Abaddon items, which will all create this Locust when absorbed by Abyss. These special Locusts have a chance to create their signature black rings when hitting an enemy. The rings rapidly deal damage to enemies that touch them, and each tick deals 100% of your character's damage. I have to be honest here, I think this one is either bugged or a bit overtuned. The damage ticks insanely fast, and I feel like over 100 damage per proc is probably not where this Locust should be, so enjoy it while it lasts. The trigger chance is 20% for Little Abaddon, 30% for Maw of the Void and 50% for Atham. Next up is a new special Locust that can only be created from two items, Ocular Rift and the Black Hole, so let's call it the Vacuum Locust. This grey locust has a 10% chance for both items to create a small rift on the ground whenever it hits an enemy. The rift will stay on the ground for roughly 2 seconds and suck surrounding enemies and projectiles into it while also dealing damage to them. However, the rift created from this locust is a bit weaker than that from the ocular rift item, as it only deals 25% of your damage per tick instead of the usual 50%. Another special locust that can only be created from 2 items is the bait locust. The 2 items that can make it are rotten tomato and punching bag. Both locusts have a chance to apply the rotten tomato effect to enemies on hit, which will mark them and cause them to get attacked by other foes around them. The chance to trigger this effect is 20% for punching bag and 25% for rotten tomato itself, but the punching bag locust is also a shield locust at the same time. The last 5 new special locusts in the patch are all dedicated single item synergies, so I decided to put them at the end of the video, and especially the last one is pretty ridiculous, I promise. But let's start with the little horn item. Its sparking grey special locust inherits its unique on-hit effect. Touching an enemy with the locust has a 20% chance for it to summon Bighorn's hand, which will instantly kill any regular foe while dealing heavy damage to boss enemies instead. Let's stay with the demonic theme, because the black powder item also got a dedicated locust. I really like the sprite of this one. It is pitch black, and if you look closely you can see it actually releases tiny little powder pixels. Hitting an enemy with it has a 20% chance to create a small pentagram on the ground, which will deal 10 points of ticking damage to enemies inside of it, up to 5 times before disappearing. 3 more to go. The larynx item is also one that got its own synergy. This red locust has a swirling aura around itself, and hitting an enemy with it has a 25% chance to trigger a miniature version of the larynx item's scream. The radius of the scream is a bit smaller than the usual level 1 scream of the item, but it still deals a solid 30 damage to all enemies within reach. I already teased it at the beginning of the video. Mom's knife also has its own dedicated special locust now. At first glance, the locust still seems like a regular red one, but shooting it forward will cause it to draw a small knife and swing it around its body while flying through the room. Adorable and deadly. The knife deals 150% of your character's damage per tick to enemies in its path. However, the knife will be destroyed as soon as the locust itself hits an enemy or wall, so you kinda have to get a bit lucky with the position of the knife for it to deal maximum damage. And last but most certainly not least, we have the eraser locust. This pink little fellow is absolutely broken and will be run defining if you get it early enough, because every time it deals damage to an enemy, there's a 5% chance for it to straight up delete that enemy type from the run, just like if you would have used the eraser item on it. However, activating this effect will not remove the locust. It will stay around and allow you to erase multiple enemies on every single floor. The fact that the eraser is only a quality 1 item is actually good for the special locust, because the lower the damage of it, the more hits are needed to kill an enemy, which means that it has more chances to trigger the eraser effect. I'm pretty confident that this is the most powerful locust when it comes to the overall impact on the run. Finding it early in a Tainted Napoleon run will probably lead to a lot of fun. And there we have it, guys. That was all the new special locusts in patch 1.9.7.9, as well as the most important changes to the existing ones. There are also a few smaller additions to the older ones, like for example, the Psyfly locust is also a homing locust now instead of just being a shield locust. But those changes are really minor and it would be hell to pinpoint and list them all. I hope you understand, the video is already long enough. Anyway, I really hope you enjoyed the second part of my Abyss showcase. Once again, if you did, then please consider supporting me and the channel in some way. I really appreciate any form of help, as it keeps me motivated to do this. Either way, that was it for me for today, and I hope I will see you again in the next video. Bye!
He's the number 1
Isaac!
God's favorite son. His flowing robes reach down from heaven.